Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right in, shall we? Today, we are tackling one of the most profound, deeply moving, and, let's be completely honest here, somewhat misunderstood philosophers of the 20th century, Albert Camus. If you've ever looked around, felt totally overwhelmed by the absolute chaos of the world and thought, what is the point of all this? Well, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to explore how Camus took the crushing weight of a meaningless universe and remarkably transformed it into this passionate, defiant call to live life to the absolute fullest.
Now, you've probably seen this quote floating around the internet, right? It perfectly captures our modern fascination with existential dread. But here is the secret. Camus never actually said this. It's totally a misquote that mistakenly blends the sheer indifference of his famous character Myrsal with Camus himself. But even though the quote is technically fake, the underlying tension is very real. It points directly to the ultimate question that Camus actually did ask. In his legendary 1942 essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus essentially says that everything else in philosophy, like whether the world has 3 dimensions or whatever, is just a game until you answer this one truly serious question. If we look around and realize there is absolutely no profound, prepackaged reason for living, is the most logical next step to just opt out entirely? The stakes of this explanator literally could not be higher. It's a question of life and death.
All right, Section 1, the absurd condition.
To answer that ultimate question of life and death, we first need to understand the core problem. The absurd isn't just a synonym for things being weird or wacky. According to Camus, the absurd is a very specific collision. On one side, you have us, human beings with this desperate, deeply hardwired desire for order, meaning, and purpose. We really want the universe to make sense. And on the other side, you have the universe itself, which responds to our desperate pleas with a cold, chaotic, and unreasonable silence. The absurd is born exactly in that crash between our need for answers and the world's flat-out refusal to give them.
Moving on to Section 2, rejecting false escapes.
So once you realize you're trapped in this absurd condition, what do? Well, humanity typically tries to run away. Camus outlines 3 main responses here. Step 1 is physical suicide, just opting out. Camus wholly rejected this as cowardly. He argued it doesn't solve the absurd, it just eliminates one half of the collision. Step 2 is what he called philosophical suicide. This is when people take a blind leap of faith into traditional religion or absolute political ideologies just to manufacture a comforting illusion of meaning. Camus viewed this as intellectual surrender. That leaves step 3, acceptance and rebellion. You look the meaningless universe dead in the eye, accept it for what it is, and defiantly choose to live passionately anyway. This is the true absurdist path.
And this distinction between creating meaning and just accepting the absurd is exactly why Camus was absolutely not an existentialist, despite his books always being shelved right next to Jean-Paul Sartre's. Sartre believed you must artificially force constructed meaning into the world, often for the sake of some utopian future. Camus thought this was dangerous madness. He believed that sacrificing human lives in the present for a theoretical utopian tomorrow, which, totalitarian regimes were actively doing at the time, was a horrific lie. For Camus, the present human life is the only tangible value. Remarkably, this profound disagreement over ideology is actually what ended their friendship.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Myth of Sisyphus.
To give us a framework for living in the present without false hope, Camus turns to ancient Greek mythology. He uses the story of Sisyphus, a man condemned by the gods to push a massive boulder up a mountain for eternity, only to watch it roll back down every single time. It's basically the ultimate picture of a meaningless, repetitive existence. But when Sisyphus becomes fully conscious of his fate as he walks back down the mountain, he unlocks 3 incredibly powerful consequences. First, revolt. He constantly confronts his fate without ever giving up. Second, freedom. Because he has no objective future goals, he's entirely untethered from society's rules and expectations. Third, passion. He is free to experience the present moment, the rock, the sweat, the cool breeze, with ultimate intensity.
So the crucial point is summarized in this absolute mic drop of a quote. Camus writes, "The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." By fully accepting his absurd fate without any false hope, Sisyphus becomes his own master. His defiant acceptance actually transforms his eternal misery into a strange, worldly victory. He doesn't need a grand purpose to feel the sun on his face.
Section 4. From solitude to solidarity.
Pushing a rock all day is a pretty lonely job, right?
But how does this solitary, rebellious mindset apply to the rest of society? Well, in his novel The Plague, Camus traps a town in a deadly epidemic, which is a brilliant metaphor for the absurd, unexpected nature of death and suffering. The main character, Dr. Ryu, completely exhausts himself fighting the disease, but his motivation isn't grand heroism or divine purpose. He simply says, it's a matter of common decency. Rebelling against the absurd in his society simply means doing your job, helping your neighbor, and flat-out refusing to join forces with the pestilence.
This evolves into a core ethical concept for Camus, which he details in his book The Rebel. He called it la mesure, or moderation. Because we've rejected absolutes and utopian futures, we must also reject absolute political systems that justify logical crime, the institutionalized murder of citizens to achieve some perfect future. Instead, la mesure asks us to strive for relative justice and relative freedom. It is an ethics grounded entirely in human limits, common decency, and the preservation of life in the here and now.
And this brings us to a brilliant twist on Descartes' famous I think, therefore I am. Camus writes, I rebel, therefore we exist. Think about that. When you rebel against oppression or the absurdity of the world, you aren't just doing it for yourself. You are affirming a baseline value of human dignity that belongs to literally everyone. Recognizing our shared struggle against the absurd instantly bonds us together. We are all pushing boulders, therefore we have to push them in solidarity.
Finally, Section 5, Sisyphus in the Digital Age.
So how on earth do we apply a mid-20th century French philosophy to the dizzying reality of the 21st century? We really have to understand our modern crisis of meaning. There's this term, thrownness. It's a concept from philosopher Martin Heidegger describing how we are thrust into a world we didn't choose. Today, that feeling is intensely magnified by digital algorithms. We are thrown into extreme connectivity, bombarded with information, and pressured to curate flawless online identities. And yet, ironically, this hyperconnection is making us feel more alienated, isolated, and empty than ever before. We are completely disconnected from our authentic selves.
Think about the parallel here for a second. Sisyphus had a heavy physical boulder that he pushed up a hill only for it to fall back down. Today, our boulder is the endless social media feed, the continuous scrolling, the constant notifications, the unending quest for validation through likes. It's a repetitive, psychologically fetal task that mirrors that mythological curse perfectly. We push the digital boulder every single day, often coming away feeling completely hollow.
But remember, Camus actually gives us a way out through rebellion. Here's how we practice absurdist rebellion online to take back our agency. First, acknowledge the sheer absurdity of digital metrics. Likes and follower counts absolutely do not define human value. Second, actively question the personalized realities algorithms build for you. They are designed to trap your attention, not enrich your life. Third, resist the urge to perform and curate an idealized image. And finally, use your freedom to pursue authentic, deep connections that go way beyond shallow digital interactions. You have the power to consciously choose how you engage. As Camus reminds us at the end of The Plague, the bacillus of absurdity and meaninglessness never truly dies. It just bides its time. The absurd is a constant condition of human life. But that doesn't mean we just surrender to it. It means we rebel. We find our freedom, our passion, and our solidarity in the struggle itself. So I'll leave you with this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. Knowing that the universe isn't going to hand you a grand purpose, how will you choose to passionately, defiantly push your boulder today?